Nyu-Yorkda avtohalokatga tushib qolgan vatandoshlarimiz million dollarlab kompensatsiyalar olishar ekan degan mish-mishlar tarqalib yotibdi. Shuning uchun ham mana shunday mish-mishlarga bugun biz yuridik nuqtai nazardan nuqta qo'yish uchun ushbu intervyuni professional yurist va advokat bilan o'tkazamiz va qolaversa, agarda vatandoshlarimiz Nyu-Yorkda har xil turdagi travmalar oladigan bo'lsa, har bir travma turiga sug'urta kompaniyasi o'zi qancha kompensatsiya to'laydi? Mana shu hamma savollarni biz bugun Gabriel Law yuridik kompaniyasining yuristi Chrisga beramiz. Hello Chris, how are you?
I'm all right, how are you?
I'm well. So, everybody thinks in New York they're gonna have $1 million if they got into the car accident in New York. Is it true or not?
It can be true, but most often than not, it is not. So in New York, usually insurance companies will evaluate a claim for purposes of settlement based on several things. One would be, what the diagnosis is for the treatment, how long they treated for, the first date that they received treatment, and whether the injuries resulted in some kind of disability or permanent injury.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, what is the most common types of insurance policy limits that you see at your job?
Sure. At my job for auto policies and auto accidents, it's going to be a lot of 25,000, 50,000, 100,000. Commonly, the most would be 250. For you to get into $1 million policy, it is usually a tractor trailer or some other type of commercial vehicle that's owned by a corporation. Those will usually have the upwards of $1 million policies.
Okay, so thank you very much. And for the next question, how are the different types of injuries evaluated by the insurance companies in New York?
Okay, well, I want to start with the most common and then talk about, the most serious ones.
Okay.
Now, if the injury is just, whiplash and regular pain, usually that will be evaluated or settled between $0 to about $20,000. If you have what's called radiculopathy, which means that there is some kind of nerve damage as well, that will increase the value of the case. Something like herniations or bulges in your spine, shown by MRIs or diagnostic testing, that will usually be around $25,000 to $50,000 settlement. Now, if you received any sort of injections to your back, like epidural injections or trigger points or nerve blocks, that will increase the value of the case as well. Also, if you're young versus being old, somebody that's young with herniations and bulges will get a better settlement than somebody that's 60 years old with the same injuries, because the insurance company will argue that the bulges and herniations were acquired during, your life, not necessarily during the accident. Now, something a little bit more serious, like a shoulder tear or a knee tear, you would usually settle that around $30,000 to $60,000 in the state of New York. Now, if you had surgery either to the knee or the shoulder, now we're
Please
looking...
don't tell you, he or she, because...
He or she.
Yeah, please.
Now, if the client...
The client, yes, please.
Now, if the client had surgery to the knee or the shoulder, then we're usually looking at a settlement of about 75 to about 150, 175.
Interesting.
Now, with the knee, because obviously we walk on your knee, if you have any problems ambulating or walking after the surgery, that will also increase the value of the case. Now, if the client has surgery to the spine, either a discectomy or a laminectomy, those cases would usually settle between $100,000 to $200,000 in the state of New York. With a fusion, a spinal fusion being the surgery that has the most value. So that would be settled around $500,000 or more, depending on what the different policy is. Now, as to fractures, a fracture in your wrist with surgery would settle around about 150,000 to 200,000. And a fracture to your femur or your ankle or any part of your leg would have a higher value just because it prevents you from walking. Now, if the client had surgery to the ankle and the doctors had to put in screws or plates and leave it in the ankle, those cases would usually settle around 300,000 or more. Yeah, so it really depends on the type of injury and the type of treatment that the client receives.
Okay, so because of we live in New York, New York has one, very common life credo: no man, no fan. Money is so important at this city. Yeah, so that's why I have a question.
Yes.
What types of injuries would get you the most money?
Okay, so if the client wants $1 million settlement on a case,
yeah,
we're usually looking at something with catastrophic injuries. We're talking about a wrongful death, somebody died. We're talking about the client ended up being paralyzed in some way, or with some, blindness or some kind of brain injury. Those cases would generally settle, $1 million plus if it gets taken to trial. But obviously, the client would have to be very seriously hurt for that to happen.
Okay, and very important question for exactly people in New York. If they don't have house insurance, but they involved in some car accident, what they have to do?
Okay, so New York is what's called a no-fault state, meaning that in the state of New York, if you get involved in an auto accident, the insurance for the vehicle that you were in will pay for all of your medical treatment up to $50,000. Now, if the accident involves the client being a pedestrian or somebody on a motorcycle, and obviously they don't have auto insurance on those, then it would be the insurance for the car that hit you. But it would work the same way. They will pay up to $50,000 for any medical treatment, any time that you lost from work, if you had to miss work because of your injuries, and any out-of-pocket expenses. And so it's really important that even if the person doesn't have health insurance, that they still go and seek treatment as soon as possible, because a delay in seeking treatment will definitely affect the overall case and our ability to settle the case at the end. Generally, if the client goes from an ambulance at the scene of the accident to an emergency room at a hospital, that will increase the value of the case substantially, because the insurance company is not going to be able to say that the injuries were not related to the accident if you went directly from the accident to the hospital.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. It was a really informative interview.
Thank you.
And the last question, please give me a favor, give some recommendations to Uzbek community in New York if they involved in that kind of accidents.
All right. Well, a couple of lasting thoughts for you to ponder on. Document absolutely everything. Take photographs of the scene. Take photographs of your injuries. If one of the doctors gives you like a walking device or a crutch, take photographs of that, any kind of medical equipment. That will help us as your attorneys get you a better settlement. Also, don't be surprised if the initial offer from the insurance company is low. Insurance companies are trying to pay you the least amount of money possible for the injuries. So that's why it's really important to hire an attorney that has experience in that field and that can advocate and negotiate a proper settlement to get you reimbursed for the injuries that you received.
So really nice. Thank you. Interesting.
Thank you.
Do'stlar, umid qilaman kerakli maslahatlarni oldinglar, chunki Xudo ko'rsatmasin agarda mana shunaqangi vaziyatlarga, ya'ni avariyaga tushib qolgan bo'lsanglar va har qanday travma turini olgan bo'lsanglar, bilishinglar kerak, Avvalambor demak hamma narsaga albatta hujjat kerak, albatta sog'lig'inglar birinchi o'rinda. Shuning uchun shifokor huzuriga borib, hamma o'sha shifokor bilan bog'liq bo'lgan hujjatlarni ham aynan advokatlarga sir taqdim etishingiz kerak. Shundagina sizlar sug'urta kompaniyalaridan katta kompensatsiyalarni olishinglar mumkin bo'ladi. Kelishdikmi? Do'stlar, ushbu video sizlarga yoqqan bo'lsa, bitta like sizlardan o'rgilib ketsin. Faqatgina dislike bilan adashtirmagan holda va haligacha bizni kanalimizga obuna bo'lmagan bo'lsangiz, hozirdan ushbu videoni tushamiz va qizil tugmachani topamiz. Bu yerda o'zbek tilida yozilgan obuna bo'lish, rus tilida podpisatsiya, ingliz tilida subscribe. O'sha shundoqqina bosib qo'ysanglar, oldida qo'ng'iroqchani rasmi ham bor. Agar uni ham bosib qo'yadigan bo'lsangiz, demak har safar biz yangi video qo'ygan paytimizda sizlarga xush xabar keladi. Mish-Mishmi TV kanalida yangi video qo'yildi. Nima ham dedim? Mish-Mishmi TV kanalida va Nyu-Yorkning kompaniyasida ko'rishganda ko'rishguncha. Thank you.